my buddy Rob Morse. Rob Morse writes for Slow Facts blog and contributes to the Politics and Guns podcast, as well as AmmoLand Shooting Sports News. Rob Morse is he's a design engineer and analyst by day and a civil rights advocate by night. His quote is, I like this a lot. I respect ideas that have stood the test of time and circumstance. I respect those slow facts. This segment is sponsored by Cargo, cases and rugged gear outfitters in El Cajon, cargostores.com on 423 Broadway, El Cajon, California. You know, we've been talking about Cargo, and you know about there's over 2,000 different kinds of cases that protect your firearms, your photo gear, your drones, and whatever you need to protect. But did you know that Cargo is a Gerber dealer? Gerber, super high quality knives for all different types of activities. And check it out. This is my new favorite Gerber. You see that?
See it.
And I have a particular tool on this. It's got the usual knife and screwdriver and pliers and scissors and all that other cool stuff. But look at how tiny it is. And it's got this. I've never seen this before. This is for opening boxes. And we live in an Amazon world.
Right. No kidding.
So this is something like I could carry a knife around and not use the pliers for a year and a half, you know?
Right.
But this box opener, this little tool that helps you open a box, I'm using this like every day now.
It's got like a little tooth on it that kind of hangs up. That's interesting.
That's right. So it opens it up. Okay, I call it the Unboxinator. It opens up packages like a champ. So support local. Go visit them. Pick up a Gerber dime for yourself and check out the other Gerber knives that they carry. Use GOR for a 10% off of their website, or if you go in and let them know, they'll give you 10% off. Great products, great prices, and uncommonly good services. Cases and rugged gear outfitters. Go check them out. Rob, how you doing, man?
I'm good. It's great to talk to you again.
It's great to talk to you. How have you been? Happy New Year.
Yeah. Well, Rich and I tried to set this conversation up. I think we aimed for September, and he said, can you wait? And then I said, can you wait? And here we are in 2025.
Yeah, not a moment too soon.
Evidently.
So I love your term, the slow facts. I know we've talked about it before, but let everybody know what you mean. What are slow facts?
Oh, Mike, you and I have been on the internet. We've been on social media. Okay, I'm over 6 years old. I can't compete with teenage emotion. Something will happen in the world and someone will tell you all their feelings about it. And I'm going, I'm still struggling to find out what happened.
Yeah.
The guy who said, let's wait 72 hours, that was me, just to figure out what really happened. Then I can figure out what it means. Now, hey, you and I talked about whether we want to talk about some sort of unattractive things. You know, we just had a mass murder here in Louisiana, where I am now. You had near you an attempted mass murder in Las Vegas. I understand that people have a lot of emotions for that because we don't know what happened. We don't have the facts. All we have to go on is our gut. Because, I mean, let's face it, it's going to take the FBI 2 months to fill out a spreadsheet.
It is, and I really wanted to talk about that with you and that's why I wanted to lead off with your term, slow facts, because yes, there were two. January 1st, there were two attempted mass murders, and one of them, the one in Las Vegas, turned into, I don't even know what to call it. It was just this huge conspiracy theory fest. And
yes.
I wanted to really talk about that. What happened was, first of all, let's just kind of talk about what happened. So there's a guy named, what's his name? Matthew Livelsberger, I think is how you pronounce that. I hope I pronounced his last name correctly. Now, this guy was in his 19th year, active duty Army. He was a Green Beret, and by all accounts was an outstanding soldier. He also, it sounds like, from close friends of his, including I guess there was somebody he dated who was also a nurse in the Army, and she described him having a traumatic brain injury that sounds like it went undiagnosed, and because he was afraid it would affect his career. And it sounded like it really, truly changed him. And it also sounds like that his current marriage fell apart just days prior to what he did. He rented a Cybertruck by Tesla. He was in Colorado. This is kind of odd. I don't know if you saw this, but if you look at the route he took, I think he made a mistake with his GPS, because he actually went to Las Vegas, New Mexico from Colorado. And
Really?
Las Vegas, New Mexico is a tiny little town. It's actually the town where they shot Red Dawn in 1984. That's Las Vegas, New
I
Mexico.
didn't know.
Yeah, and by the way, if you pull up into Las Vegas, New Mexico, it looks exactly like it did in 1984. I mean, it's this little tiny town. They even still have the mural that says Calumet, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, they shot a couple of movies there. No Country for Old Men. They shot Red Dawn there. They shot a number of movies there. And then it looks like he pretty quickly picked up on his mistake and then rerouted and went to the Las Vegas he meant to go to. Now, I don't know if that might have just been related. It's kind of odd that a Green Beret would make that kind of navigation mistake, but whatever. He shows up in Las Vegas. He had purchased 2 handguns in Colorado. He rigged some kind of explosive in his car, in this Cybertruck. He reached out to a number of girlfriends along the way and just kind of shot the stuff about old times, kind of reminiscing. And then it looks like he shot himself with one of the pistols he purchased, ignited this improvised bomb, and a couple people, I think like 7 people were hurt. Nobody was killed other than himself. So that looks like those all appear to be factual. And
Yes.
but then here's what happened, and then let's talk about it, Rob. Sean Ryan, who is he was in the Navy, he was a SEAL. He's a very successful podcaster. I've been following. I've been, not religiously, but I've been following. I remember like one of his first broadcasts where he was still talking about guns. He was talking about an AR, and he's very likable. He had on a guy who was former Army intelligence, which is a broad term. I think people hear, military and intelligence, and they think like, they're James Bond or something. It's a very broad term. I don't really understand exactly what level of intelligence he was involved in the Army. And the whole hour or so was revolved around this other guy who, what's his name? Shoemate or Shoe? I think it's spelled Shoemate, but I think it's actually Shomate. He received an email that apparently it looks like it came from this Green Beret guy who committed this bomb, and it had wild, outlandish claims for why he was doing this.
Right.
He was talking about Chinese submarines that launched gravitational propulsion drones, and here's what I think I want to discuss, Rob, and then tell me everything, all your thoughts on it. But they talked for a good hour on on these outlandish claims,
Right.
and it it didn't even really enter the conversation that this was a guy who had a break from mental health. And that's why he committed this horrible crime. And that those outlandish, bizarre claims, there's no way they were true. I remember at one point in the show, this Shumate guy, I hope that's how you say his last name, I don't mean to mispronounce, he said that he was told that the corpse in the Cybertruck, their DNA didn't match the son of this Matthew Leibelsberger. So the implication was it wasn't actually him.
But it could be that it's not his son.
Well, but here's I think the most important point is there is no way on God's green earth that they collected DNA, processed it, and compared it to this guy's son in 24 hours.
Correct.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? And some of these outlandish claims, like it wasn't even a speed bump that they were describing that the Chinese have submarines off the coast with alien technology. That wasn't a red flag at all. He just thought, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of alien technology now. Like, what am I going to do? And Steve, he actually, it was named Ryan, Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan actually went into hiding for a few days after this podcast, and that lit the internet on fire. And those were not slow facts. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that, Rob?
Well, see, there's something we still have to talk about. Let's our buddy Mike Salvini, Walk the Talk America. Yeah. It says people who have mental health issues might be organic. You could chemo brain. The great news is medicine's getting better. We're living longer. More of us get cancer of some sort. If you're treated with chemotherapy, it affects your thinking. Nothing on you. That's just the nature of the beast. Okay, we want to take their guns away. And when they say that they're aliens flying overhead, you go, no, honey, you're trying to make sense of a world that's beyond you right now. It'll get better. Isn't it tragic that we couldn't help this guy? His bell got rung one too many times. Personal and a little bit off topic. Mm-hmm. My daughter was doing MMA. Muay Thai kickboxing. I said, "Honey, you got a brain. Are you sure you're okay?" She goes, "Yeah, I'm done with my PhD, Dad. I can afford to do this a few times." So I go, "Oh, please, don't scare your parent to death." Similar ideas here, though. We know a lot about mass murderers. We've studied the daylights out of them. Mm-hmm. We all want to know, what were they thinking? Why are they doing this? And we have a pretty good idea. Shall I go on? I mean, is that?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
And I mean, the other thing is not only like we know that post-traumatic stress is a real thing. We know that he had a traumatic brain injury. You know what I mean? So like it's moving one step further. I think with a lot of mass murderers, we kind of go, I don't know what happened to this guy. He grew up in a good family or whatever. We know that this guy it was wide open. They knew going into this podcast that all these reporters, they knew that this guy was having issues, and that still didn't spark any logic.
Right. Well, okay. The media is sensational because they have to sell advertising. Let's back up and see if we can learn a little bit from the facts. Most mass murderers are not worried about dying. Look, and you know this because the guys who commit suicide the most are older men like myself who get divorced. All of a sudden, their life doesn't matter. Most of them just about. Hopefully they walk away. We see a big jump in suicide risk for them. But when we see mass murderers, they're trying to become significant again.
Yeah.
Wow, that's heartbreaking. And gun laws don't stop them. What they are afraid of, what will stop them, and this sounds bizarre, is a fear of failure. For a lot of guys who have been social outcasts or their thinking is disturbed, they enjoy the planning. Oh, see what I'm going to do. That feeling of power and significance keeps them in the planning stage for years. Sometimes it's long enough that we can catch them and stop them, get them some help. Now, that uncertainty changes everything about them. They want to be shot by the little old lady who was sitting in the cafe as they try to do some mass murder. And that explains why they almost universally, like 8+% of the time, go to gun-free zones.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds bizarre, but there's a dark web where these guys talk to each other, and they the bad news is they goad each other on. The good news is they say that doesn't work. And our call, I'm going to call him John. Hey, Mike, to call John Lott a colleague. We've both been at this long enough. We need to do that, don't we?
Go for it. I won't argue.
He pointed out, and he looked over the last 26 years.
Yeah.
John used to be an economist, so he loves data. 83% of the attacks happened where guns were banned.
Right.
Mass murderers aren't stupid.
Yeah.
They want to be involved in a one-way gunfight.
Yeah. I can't think of a single mass murder that happened in a police station.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I can think of a lot of them that happened in, movie theaters where they said no guns, or schools
Right.
where you're not allowed to have guns to protect children. I can think of a lot of them. And according to John Lott, well over 80% of them have happened in a gun-free zone, either a legally enforced gun-free zone or just a policy-enforced gun-free zone. But there were even some instances where people drove past targets because they weren't gun-free and went to a gun-free zone because they knew they weren't going to see any resistance at all. I mean, it's not a coincidence, and it's not even a stretch. It is very clear that mass murderers pick gun-free zones to commit crimes.
Let me add to that just a little bit. Just as I left California, where you and I, shook hands for the last time, I started helping people promote school volunteers that would defend their school, because there's a matter of time. If the solution isn't in the building, you got to wait 20 minutes for the cops, and that's just heart-wrenching. In lots of the U.S., the sheriffs were the issuing authority, and after a mass murder, all the school board and all the principals call the sheriff, and they say, "I want a deputy on every hall," and the sheriff goes, "So do I.
Right.
I don't have the guys." And then they point out that a bunch of your school staff have carry permits. They carry everywhere but at school because you didn't give them permission. California used to be able to do that. They changed the laws. Now it's really difficult. You don't see it as much in California. In the rest of the U.S., we have over 3 million days where an armed school staff member was at school. We've never had an attack on those schools that had a public policy of armed staff, because
Right.
the crazy guys go, not.
Well, no, there has to be some kind of change, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but they're taking people's ability to defend themselves away, especially in a designated area, in mass, has not proven to be a safety policy. It hasn't, proven to be a crime prevention policy. Somebody in the chat brought up that, hey, he wasn't just talking about Chinese submarines and anti-gravitational propulsion or whatever. He was also talking about war crimes. And, I don't know. I don't know if those war crimes actually happened. But I think that that's actually another indicator that he was having a break from reality, that he was having he distanced himself from mental health, unfortunately. And I've heard reports, unconfirmed, so I certainly don't want to be part of the problem, that he had recently started taking medication, like some kind of antipsychotic, medication.
Oh.
And the implication being that possibly that made things worse rather than better. Don't know. But
Wow.
but what I'm saying, I guess, the idea that he knows about war crimes, which may be completely and totally valid. Maybe there were some war crimes and there was a cover-up. That may completely be factual. But the idea that to handle that situation, you rent a Cybertruck, drive to Las Vegas, and blow yourself up in front of Trump's hotel, that's not how mentally healthy people would have handled that situation. I mean, especially in this day and age, there's so many protections for whistleblowers. Does that mean it's a perfect system?
Right.
No. Does that mean that But I think it's pretty clear that the guy, again, was having a mental health episode, and to not have that figure into the calculus, to go on over 2 million people saw Sean Ryan's podcast. And then within hours, there were, podcasts about the podcast. And,
Yes.
And what concerns me, is that, the simplest, most rational explanation was barely even covered. You know, that people were just like, well, yeah, of course the Chinese have submarines with anti-gravitational, drones. I mean, that's obvious.
Let's back up. And Dave Grossman did a great job at expanding this and making it understandable to guys that haven't been there.
Mm-hmm.
I've had guys shooting at me in training. They weren't real bullets. They hurt. This guy did it for real.
Yeah.
That is a horrible environment if you want to remember anything. Your brain does crazy things under that amount of stress. That's not a criticism of him. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
What we're forgetting is something that we learned right at the end of Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
We want to keep these guys together, talking to each other, and rotate them in and out as a group, because they have some really distorted memories and they heal each other. The great news is not the traumatic brain injury, but the distortion of memory. Hey man, I don't know if I can trust you because you did this. And you go, I never did that. Well, I thought I saw you. No, that wasn't, I don't know what you saw, but it wasn't that. Because we're under such stress, we take fragments of perception and we stitch a story together around them that's not necessarily the truth. Now, we have an excuse for that when they're in combat. We don't have an excuse for that when it happens on the internet.
Interesting. What do you mean? I get you. Okay, we don't have an excuse for when it happens on the internet. Yeah.
Right. Here we are doing it again with a podcast of a podcast of a podcast.
Yeah. Well, we even had a doctor on a couple of weeks ago, and he brought up an interesting case or an interesting point that I've been thinking about ever since. He wants to take the D off of PTSD. He said it's not a disorder. You know, if you put these warriors, these brave men and women, in a stressful situation like combat, especially for an extended period of time, then and they have these, this post-traumatic stress, this reaction to it, that is not a disorder. It's completely normal. And that for a lot of reasons, he wanted to stop using the D in PTSD. So I think, I mean, it's totally rational. This guy was a Green Beret for 19 years. We were at war for like 20 years. He was doing, things that is horrible that we have to ask anybody to do, in the name of combat. And he apparently, again, had a legit, traumatic brain injury, of course, but it's just too bad we couldn't. There's so many things. It's too bad that we couldn't get to this guy, that nobody could get to this guy and help him and get him the help he needs. And I got to tell you, that's tough. Mental health is sometimes so difficult to recognize. They're acting normal one minute, they're not normal the next minute. It's really, really bizarre. I've been in conversations with people who were having, mental health issues, and 10, 15 minutes they're completely and totally normal and rational, and then they go off the reservation. Like, they say something that's just so completely out of, like, wait a minute, what? And it's such a jarring thing. So I think that's definitely that's an area for improvement, is mental health, and specifically mental health for people that have been in combat or any kind of military situation. But then the other area for improvement is, being able to rationally sort through this stuff, as it comes on the internet, being able to think about the things that you're hearing and going, wait a minute, something's not adding up here. That doesn't make any sense. We can't promote that.
Let me keep that problem on its side a little bit.
Sure.
Because I was studying the event in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the French Quarter. The police chief, who I think is a DEI hire, said the entire French Quarter should be a gun-free zone. And I went, do you know how violent the French Quarter is? Because criminals go there to rob the drunks, and that's why you're. So they're part of the Second Amendment community. We're not quite up to speed on alcohol yet. And let me explain that. when we look at how states handle the issue of alcohol, it varies enormously. And I'm going to give you the two extremes. One, and you mentioned on your show, no guns where alcohol served.
Right.
The other extreme, and there are states that do this, you may drink and carry, but it's against the law to use your firearm, just like it's against the law to use your car. You can have car keys, you can't drive. You can have your gun, you best not use it because you're intoxicated. Now, there's the legal theory of competing harms. If I were home and intoxicated and somebody broke in, what would I do? I'd probably try and do, and your lawyer would tell you, you're going to do the safest thing. If you can run away, do. If you have to defend yourself, yes. By the way, you're going to make a blood test and they're going to find out that you've been drinking. And in between, we have different levels of that. You can carry if you don't drink. To me, that's the designated driver law. And then you can drink, but you cannot be intoxicated. So they're treating the car like the gun.
Yeah. What do you think of that? Do you think that it sounds reasonable on the surface? What are your thoughts on it?
See, and then the issue of competing harms. In my town where I live, we got a bunch of cowboys. There are a bunch of cowboy bars. The cops come there every closing time because there are going to be fights. It's just, I don't get and I'm too old to take any hits. So I don't go to those bars.
Oh, did we lose Rob?
I think internet's down.
Driver is going to take everybody home in is far more power than a firearm. It kills many more people. Here, let's also use a gun so that we can use less force than an automobile.
Interesting. Well, and the broader point is, this demonization of firearms. I should be able to go into a bar with a concealed weapon.
That's
I don't
so
drink.
grown up. I'm not sure I'm used to it yet.
But I don't drink. So, why am I more dangerous in a bar, than I am standing outside of the bar? But in both situations, I'm completely and totally sober. So, thank you, Rob Morse. Rob Morse is an awesome guy. Check him out on AmmoLand. Check him out on Slow Facts. I've known Rob for forever. He used to live out here in San Diego. We used to do Second Amendment activism together, and he's in Louisiana now, and he's still fighting the good fight, and he's such a good dude, and I have so much respect. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. I'm Michael from Gun Owners Radio. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and make a comment. Help us out. Go to gunownersradio.com. Thanks for watching.